In the days that followed, Malcolm thought a lot about the strange half-hour or so with Lord Asriel in the moonlit priory garden. He and Asta discussed it endlessly. It wasn't something he could talk about to anyone but his daemon. He certainly couldn't mention it to his father and mother. They were always too busy with the inn to notice much about him, except whether he needed a wash or wasn't doing his homework. He knew they wouldn't realize that his canoe was gone, for example. He told no one about it, except Dr. Relf. Getting to her house in Jericho would be a land-based business, until Lord Asriel managed to send Belle Sauvage back to him. And when he knocked at the familiar door on Saturday, he was later than he usually was. "You lent him your boat? That was generous," she said when she'd heard the story. "Well, I trusted him, 'cause he was good with Lyra. He showed her the moon and kept her warm and didn't make her cry, and obviously Sister Fenella must have trusted him to let him hold her. I couldn't believe it at first. He's hard to say no to. I'm sure you did the right thing. He knows how to paddle a canoe all right. Do you think these enemies of his were the same people who tried to take Lyra away from the priory? The Court of Protection, or whatever it was. The Office of Child Protection? I don't think so. I thought he was going to take Lyra away himself to keep her safe from them, but he must have thought she was safer where she was than with him. So he must be in a lot of danger. I hope La Belle Sauvage doesn't get bullet holes in her. I'm sure he'll look after her. Now, what about some new books?" Malcolm went home with a book about symbolic pictures, because what Dr. Relf had told him about the alethiometer had intrigued him greatly, and a book called The Silk Road. For some reason, he thought it was going to be a murder story, but it turned out to be a true description by a modern traveler of the trade routes across Central Asia from Tartary to the Levant. He had to look those places up in his atlas when he got home, and soon realized that he needed a better atlas. "Mum, for my birthday, can I have a big atlas?" "What do you want that for?" She was frying some potatoes, and he was eating rice pudding. It was a busy night, and he'd be needed in the bar before long. "Well, to look things up," he said. "I expect so," she said. "I'll talk to Dad about it. Come on, get that finished." The steamy, noisy kitchen was the safest place in the world, it seemed to him. Safety had never been anything to think about before. It was something you took for granted, like his mother's endless, effortless, generous food, and the fact that there would always be hot plates ready to serve it on. So he knew that he was safe, and that Lyra was safe in the priory, and that Lord Asriel was safe because he'd escaped his pursuers. But there was danger all around, just the same. The next day was Sunday, and the rain was coming down harder than ever. Hannah Relf made an inspection of the sandbags protecting her front door and went along to the end of the street to see how much the level of the canal had risen. She was alarmed to see, beyond the canal, the entire stretch of land called Port Meadow, acres of open ground, invisible under a grey and rain-swept wilderness of water. The wind gave it the appearance of flowing, although she knew it couldn't be, a great mass of water flowing inexorably towards the houses and businesses of Jericho behind her. It was too bleak and depressing to stand and look at for long, and, besides, the rain was coming down harder than ever, so she turned back, intending to shut her door and put another log on the fire and sit with her studies and a cup of coffee. But there was a van outside her house, an unmarked vehicle that nevertheless said official in every line of the grey, unwindowed metal of the bodywork. "Cross over," said her daemon. "Just walk naturally and go on past." "What are they doing?" she whispered. "Knocking. Don't look." She tried to keep a steady pace. She had nothing to fear from the police, or from any other agency, except that, like every other citizen, she had everything to fear. They could lock her up with no warrant and keep her there with no charge. The old Act of Habeas Corpus had been set aside, with little protest from those in Parliament who were supposed to look after English liberty, and now one heard tales of secret arrests and imprisonment without trial, and there was no way of finding out whether the rumours were true. Her association with Oakley Street would be no help, in fact. If anyone found out about it, it might even make things worse. These agencies and half-hidden powers were fiercely rivalrous, but she couldn't walk in the rain all afternoon. It was absurd. Besides, she had friends. She was a highly respectable member of a great Oxford college. She would be missed. Questions would be asked. She knew lawyers who could get her out of any cell in a matter of hours. She turned back and made straight for her house, splashing through the water that already lay an inch or two deep on the pavement. She called out when she was close enough. "Can I help?" "What do you want?" The man knocking turned and looked. She stood at the gate, trying to seem as if she wasn't afraid. "This your house, ma'am?" "Yes." "What is it you want?" "We're from Environmental Protection, ma'am. Just calling on all the houses in this street, and the others, to see if you're all right in case we get any flooding." The speaker was a man in his 40s, whose daemon was a bedraggled-looking robin. The other man was younger. His daemon was an otter, and she had been standing on the sandbags outside Hannah's door. When Hannah spoke, the daemon flowed over to the young man, who picked her up. Hannah began. "These sandbags are leaking, ma'am," the young man said. "They'll let water in down in that corner." "Oh. Well, thank you for letting me know. All right round the back," the other man said. "Yes, that's sandbagged as well. Mind if we have a look?" "No, I suppose not." "Round this way." She led them along the narrow space between her house and next door's fence, and stood back while they looked at the sandbags at the foot of the back door. While the younger man examined the gap between the door and the frame, the older man said, pointing next door, "Any idea who lives there, miss?" "Miss, now," she thought. "It's a man called Mr. Hopkins," she said. "He's rather old. I think he's gone to stay with his daughter." He peered over the fence. The house was dark and quiet. "No sandbags there," he said. "Charlie, we better put a few bags here, front and back." "Righto," said Charlie. "Is it going to flood then?" Hannah asked. "No way of telling, really. The weather forecast," he shrugged. "Best to be ready, I always think." "Quite true," she said. "Thank you for checking." "It's all right, Miss Tata." They splashed away to their van. Hannah pulled and pushed and kicked at the corner they'd said was leaking, to redistribute the sand, and then went inside and locked the door. Malcolm was keen to speak to Sister Fenella and ask her what Lord Asriel had said to her in the night, but she simply refused to talk about it. "If you want to help, peel those apples," was all she said. He had never known her to be so stubborn. She didn't even acknowledge his questions. Finally, he felt he was being rude, and also felt that he should have realized that from the first. So he kept quiet and peeled and cored the Bramley apples, all misshapen and full of brown spots. The nuns sold their best specimens and kept the less perfect ones to eat themselves, though Malcolm thought Sister Fenella's pies tasted pretty good, whatever the apples looked like. She generally kept back a small slice for him. When enough minutes had gone by, he said, "I wonder what Mr. Boatwright's doing. If they haven't caught him, I expect he's still hiding in the woods," said Sister Fenella. "He might be in disguise." "What do you think he'd disguise himself as?" I don't know. His daemon would have to be disguised as well. Much easier for children," said her squirrel daemon. "When you were little, what sort of games did you play?" said Malcolm. "Our favorite game was King Arthur," said the old lady, putting down her rolling pin. "How did you play that?" "Pulling the sword out of the stone. You remember. No one else could pull it out, and he didn't know it was impossible, and he just put his hand on the hilt, and out it came." She took a clean knife from the drawer and thrust it into the big lump of pastry she hadn't yet rolled. "There, now you pretend you can't pull it out," she said, and Malcolm went into a pantomime of vast effort, straining and grunting, and gritting his teeth, and hauling at the knife without moving it at all. Asta joined in, heaving at his wrist as a monkey. "And then the boy Arthur goes to fetch his brother's sword," said Sister Fenella's daemon. "And he sees the sword stuck in the stone and thinks, 'Oh, I'll take that one,'" said Sister Fenella, and her daemon finished, and he set his hand on the hilt, and it came out. "Just like that." Sister Fenella pulled out the knife and waved it in the air. "And so Arthur became the king," she said. Malcolm laughed. She was contracting her features in what she thought was a majestic frown, and the squirrel daemon ran up her arm and stood on her shoulder in triumph. "Were you always King Arthur?" said Malcolm. "No, I always wanted to be. Usually I was a squire or someone lowly. We played on our own, though, too," said her daemon. "You were always King Arthur, then?" "Yes, always," she said, and wiped the knife clean and put it back in the drawer. "What games do you play, Malcolm?" "Oh, I suppose exploring games. Discovering lost civilizations and stuff like that. Going up the Amazon in your canoe. Yeah, that sort of thing." "How is your boat these days?" "Is she surviving the winter?" "Well, I lent her to Lord Asriel. When he came and saw Lyra, she said nothing and went back to rolling the pastry. Then she said, I'm sure he was very grateful. But her tone was as close as she ever got to being severe. After they left the kitchen, Asta said, she was embarrassed. She was ashamed because she knew she'd done something wrong. I wonder if Sister Benedicta found out. She might stop Sister Fenella from looking after Lyra altogether. Maybe. But maybe she hasn't found out. Sister Fenella would confess. Yes, Malcolm agreed. She probably would. They didn't look in on Mr. Taffhouse because there was no light in his workshop. He'd probably gone home early. No, wait, said Asta suddenly. There's someone there. It was dusk already. The grey, rain-sodden sky was ushering darkness in the better part of an hour before it was really due. Malcolm stopped on the path to the bridge and peered back towards the dark workshop. Where? He whispered. Round the back. I saw a shadow. It's all shadows. No, like a man. They were about 100 yards from the workshop. The gravel path lay open and clear in the grey twilight, and the little glow of yellow from the priory windows. Nothing moved. And then from behind the workshop came, in a sort of lurching limp, a shape the size of a large dog, but hunched and heavy in the shoulders, which stood and stared at them directly. It's a daemon, Asta breathed. A dog. And what's not a dog? That's a hyena, and it's only got 3 legs. The hyena didn't move, but behind it, the shape of a man detached itself from the darkness of the building. He looked directly at Malcolm, though Malcolm couldn't see his face at all, and then merged back into the shadow. But his daemon stayed where she was, and then spread her 2 back legs and pissed right in the middle of the path. Her heavy-jawed face never moved as she glared at Malcolm. All he could see of it were 2 glints where her eyes caught the light. She took a lurching step forward, propping her weight on her one front leg, and looked at Malcolm for a moment more before turning and loping clumsily back into the shadow. The little episode shook Malcolm considerably. He'd never seen a maimed daemon before, or a hyena, or felt such a wave of malevolence. Nevertheless, "We've got to," said Asta. "I know, be an owl." She changed at once, and sat on his shoulder, staring intently at the dark shape of the workshop. "Can't see them," she whispered. "Don't take your eyes off that shadow." He moved back along the path, or rather along the grass beside the gravel, and came to the kitchen door again, fumbling at the handle and almost falling inside. "Malcolm," said Sister Fenella, "have you forgotten something? Just something I need to tell Sister Benedicta." "Is she in her office?" "I expect so, dear. Is everything all right?" Yes, said Malcolm, hurrying to the corridor. The smell of paint was still faintly apparent near Lyra's nursery. He knocked on Sister Benedicta's door. "Come in," she said, and blinked in surprise when she saw him. "What is it, Malcolm? We were going home past Mr. Taphouse's workshop, and we saw a man, and his daemon was a hyena with 3 legs. And they—" "Slow down," she said. "Did you see them clearly?" "Only the daemon. She had 3 legs. And I didn't think they ought to be there, I thought you ought to know, so you could make extra sure the shutters were locked." He couldn't tell her what the hyena had done. Even if he'd found the right words, he wouldn't have been able to express the contempt and hatred in the action. He felt soiled and belittled by it. She must have seen something of that in his face, because she put down her pen and stood up to put a hand on his shoulder. He couldn't remember her ever touching him before. "And yet you came back to warn us." "Well, Malcolm, that was a good deed." Now let's go and make sure you get home safely. You're not going to come with me. You wouldn't like me to do that. Very well, I'll watch you from the door. How would that be? Be careful, sister. I don't know how to say it. Have you ever heard of a man with a daemon like that? One hears all sorts of things. The question is whether they matter. Come along. I didn't want to frighten Sister Fenella. That was good of you. Is Lyra? She's asleep. You can see her tomorrow. And she's perfectly safe behind Mr. Taphouse's shutters. They went through the kitchen, where Sister Fenella watched them, puzzled, and Sister Benedicta stood at the door. Would you like a lantern, Malcolm? Oh, no, thanks, really. There's enough light, and Asta can be an owl. I'll wait till you're on the bridge. Thank you, sister. Good night. You better lock all the doors. I will. Good night, Malcolm. What she could actually do. If the man leapt out and attacked him, Malcolm didn't know, but he felt protected by the nun's attention, and he knew she wouldn't take her eyes off him till he was on the bridge. When he turned and waved. Sister Benedicta waved back and went inside and closed the door. Malcolm ran home with Asta flying ahead of him. They tumbled into the kitchen together. About time, said his mother. Where's Dad? On the roof, signaling to Mars. Where do you think? Malcolm ran into the bar and then stopped dead. Sitting on a stool, with his elbow on the counter, was a man Malcolm had never seen before, and at his feet lay a hyena daemon with one foreleg. The man had been talking to Malcolm's father. There were half a dozen other drinkers there, but none of them were close by. In fact, a couple of men who were always found standing by the bar were sitting at a table in the far corner, and the rest were near them, almost as if they wanted to be as far away from the stranger as they could get. Malcolm took this in at once, and then saw the expression on his father's face. The stranger was looking at Malcolm, and behind him his father was looking down with weary, helpless loathing. When the stranger turned back, Mr. Polstead lifted his head and forced a bright smile. "Where you been, Malcolm?" he said. "Usual place," Malcolm muttered and turned away. The hyena daemon clacked her teeth. Big, sharp, yellow teeth in a small head. She was astonishingly ugly. Whatever had robbed her of her right foreleg would have suffered for it, if those teeth had met in its flesh. Malcolm went to the tables across the room. "Anything I can get you, gentlemen?" he said, conscious that his voice was shaking a little as it fell into the silent room. He took orders for 2 more pints, but before he could leave, one of the drinkers surreptitiously took hold of his sleeve. "Just mind him," came a whisper from the table. "Watch your step with that man." Then the man let go, and Malcolm took the glasses down to the other end of the bar. Asta, of course, had been looking at nothing else, and since she was a ladybug, the direction of her gaze wasn't obvious. "I'll go and look in the terrace room," said Malcolm to his father, who nodded briefly. There was no one in the terrace room, but there were 2 empty glasses on the table. He picked them up and whispered to Asta. "What does he look like? Actually, he's sort of friendly and interested, as if he's listening while you're telling him something he wants to know about. There's nothing really wrong about him. It's her. They're one person, aren't they?" "We are." "Yeah, of course, but..." There were a few empty glasses in other places around the pub, and Malcolm took his time collecting them. "There's hardly anyone here," he said to Asta. "We won't have to stay in the bar then. Go upstairs and write it down. Something to tell Dr. Relf." He took the glasses into the kitchen and began to wash them. "Mum," he said, "there's a man in the bar." He told her what had happened as he left the priory, again leaving out what the daemon had done on the path. "And now he's here. And Dad looks ever so fed up, and no one else wants to go near him. You went and told Sister Benedicta? She'll make sure they're all shut up safe. But who is he? What's he do? Goodness knows. If you don't like the look of him, stay away from him. That was the trouble with his mother. She thought an instruction was an explanation. Well, he'd ask his father later. There's hardly anyone in tonight, he said. Not even Alice. I said she needn't bother to stay on, since it was so quiet. If that man makes a habit of coming here, it'll be like this every night. Dad'll have to tell him to stay away, but why? Never mind why. Got any homework? Well, you might as well eat your supper now and get it over with. Supper was cauliflower with cheese sauce. Asta perched on the table as a squirrel and toyed with a nut. Malcolm hurried through the meal and burned his mouth, but soothed it with a piece of cold plum pie and cream. The glasses he'd washed had drained dry, so before going upstairs, he took them back to the bar. There were a few more people in, but the man with the hyena daemon was still sitting on his stool at the counter, and the new arrivals were at the other end, ignoring him. Everyone seems to know about him, Asta grumbled. Except us, the hyena daemon hadn't moved. She lay there gnawing and licking at the stump of her missing leg, and the man sat still, one elbow on the bar, looking all around with an air of mild and knowing interest. Then something surprising happened. Malcolm was sure no one else could see. His father was chatting with the newcomers at the other end of the bar, and the men at the tables were playing dominoes. Afire with curiosity, Malcolm couldn't help staring at the man. He was about 40, Malcolm thought, with black hair and bright brown eyes, and all his features were clear and easy to see, as if he was a very well-lit photogram. He was wearing the sort of clothes a traveller might wear, and he might have been handsome, except that there was a kind of vigour and rough mischief about him that word didn't do justice to. Malcolm couldn't help liking him, and the man saw him looking, and smiled, and winked. It was a smile of warmth and complicity. It seemed to say, "We know a thing or two, the pair of us," meaning him and Malcolm. There was knowledge in his expression, and enjoyment. It invited Malcolm into a little conspiracy of acquaintance against the rest of the world, and Malcolm found himself smiling back. Under normal circumstances, Asta would have flown down at once to talk to the daemon, from politeness, even though she was frightening and ugly. But these circumstances weren't normal. So it was just the curious boy and the man with the complicated, attractive face, and Malcolm had to smile in return. Then it was over. Malcolm left the clean glasses on the bar and turned to go upstairs. "I can't even remember what he's wearing," he said once the bedroom door was shut. "Something dark," said Asta. "Do you think he's a criminal? Bound to be. But she's horrible. I've never seen a daemon so different from their person before. I wonder if Dr. Relf will know who he is. I shouldn't think so. She knows professors and scholars and people like that. He's different, and spies. She knows spies. I don't suppose he's a spy. He's too obvious. Anyone would notice a daemon like that." Malcolm turned to his homework, constructing figures with his ruler and compasses, a task he normally enjoyed, but he couldn't focus on it at all. That smile was still dazzling him. Dr. Relf had never heard of anyone with a daemon that was maimed in that way. "It must happen, though, occasionally," she said. Then Malcolm told her what the daemon had done on the path, and that puzzled her even more. Daemons were as keen on privacy as people were, being people themselves, of course. "Well, it's a puzzle," she said. "What do you think it means?" "Quite right, Malcolm. Treat it like a question for the alethiometer. See if we can work out what it all signifies. What she did on the path was an expression of contempt, wasn't it?" "Yeah, I thought so. For you, who were watching, and for the place where she was, for the priory, perhaps for the nuns and all the things they represent. Then, a hyena is a scavenger. It feeds on carrion and dead bodies left by other animals, as well as killing prey itself. So it's disgusting, but useful too," said Malcolm. "So it is. I hadn't thought of that. And it laughs. Does it? The laughing hyena. Not really a laugh, but a cry that sounds like it, like the crocodile crying tears when it doesn't mean it." "Hypocritical, you mean?" "Hypocritical," said Malcolm, relishing the word. "And the man kept out of sight, you said?" "In the shadow, anyway. Tell me about the smile." "Oh, yes, it was the strangest thing he did. He smiled and winked. No one else saw it. It was as if he was letting me know that he knew something I knew and no one else did. It was a secret between us, but not— You know how that sort of thing could make you feel creepy or dirty or guilty. But it wasn't like that. It was happy, sort of. Really friendly and nice. And I can't hardly believe it now, but I couldn't help sort of liking him. But his daemon kept gnawing at her leg, said Asta. I was watching. It was still raw, the stump, I mean. Sort of bloody. What could that mean? Said Malcolm. They're vulnerable, perhaps, said Dr. Relf. If she lost another leg, she wouldn't be able to walk at all. What an awful situation. He didn't look worried, though. He didn't look as if anything would worry him or frighten him ever. Did you feel sorry for his daemon? No, said Malcolm decisively. I felt glad. She'd be much more dangerous if she wasn't hurt like that. So you're in two minds about this man. Exactly. But your parents? Mum just said keep away, and didn't say why. Dad obviously hated him being in the bar, but he had no reason to ask him to leave, and the other customers hated him being there too. I asked Dad later, and all he said was that he was a bad man, and he wasn't going to let him in the pub again. But he didn't tell me what he'd done, or why he was bad, or anything. I think it was just something he felt. Have you seen him since? It was only the day before yesterday. But no. Let me see what I can find out, said Dr. Relf. Now, what about your books this week? The symbolic pictures one was difficult, said Malcolm. I didn't understand most of it. What did you understand? That things can stand for other things. That's the main point. Good. The rest is a matter of detail. No one can remember all the meanings of the alethiometer pictures, so we need the books to be able to read it. It's like a secret language. Yes, it is. Did someone make it up? Or did they discover it? Was that what you were going to say? Yes, it was, he said, a little surprised. So, which is it? That's not so easy. Let's think of another example. Something else. You know the theorem of Pythagoras? The square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. That's exactly it. And is that true for every example you've tried? Yes. And was it true before Pythagoras realized it? So he didn't invent it. He discovered it. Yes. Good. Now let's take one of the alethiometer symbols. The hive, for example, surrounded by bees. One of its meanings is sweetness, and another is light. Can you see why? Honey for the sweetness. And what are candles made of? Wax, beeswax. That's right. We don't know who first realized that those meanings were there, but did the similarity, the association, exist before they realized it, or not until then? Did they invent it or discover it? Malcolm thought hard. That's not quite the same, he said slowly, because you can prove Pythagoras' theorem, so you know it must be true. But there's nothing to prove with the beehive. You can see the connection, but you can't prove. All right, put it like this. Suppose the person who made the alethiometer was looking for a symbol to express the ideas of sweetness and light. Could they have chosen just anything? Could they have chosen a sword, for example, or a dolphin? Malcolm tried to work it out. Not really, he said. You could twist it a lot and make them similar, but that's right. There's a natural sort of connection with the beehive, but not with the other two. Yeah. Yes. So was it invented or discovered? Malcolm thought hard again, and then smiled. Discovered, he said. All right. Next, let's try this. Can you imagine another world? I think so. Yes. Would his theorem be true there as well? Yes. It would be true everywhere. Now, imagine that world has people like us in it, but no bees. They'd have the experience of sweetness and of light. But how would they symbolize them? Well, they'd find some other things. Maybe sugar for the sweetness and something else, maybe the sun for light. Yes, those would work. Let's imagine another world, a different one again, where there are bees but no people. Would there still be a connection between a beehive and sweetness and light? Well, the connection would be here in our minds, but not there. If we can think about that other world, we could see a connection. Even if there was no one there to see it, that's good. Now, we still can't say whether that language you spoke about, the language of symbols, was definitely invented or definitely discovered, but it looks more as if As if it was discovered, said Malcolm. But it's still not like Pythagoras' theorem. You can't prove it. It depends on... Yes. It depends on people being there to see it. The theorem doesn't. That's right. But it's a bit invented as well. Without people to see it, it would just be... It might as well not be there at all. He sat back, feeling slightly dizzy. Her familiar room was warm. The chair was comfortable. The plate of biscuits was to hand. He felt as if this was the place where he was truly at home, more so than his mother's kitchen or his own bedroom. And he knew he would never say that to anyone but Asta. "I'll have to go soon," he said. "You've worked hard. Was that work?" "Yes, I think so." "Don't you?" "I suppose so." "Can I see the alethiometer?" "I'm afraid it has to stay in the library. We've only got the one instrument. But here's a picture. You can have..." She took a folded sheet of paper from a drawer in the cabinet and gave it to him. Unfolding it, he found the plan of a large circle with 36 divisions around the rim. In each of the little spaces was a picture, an ant, a tree, an anchor, an hourglass. "There's the beehive," he said. "Keep it," she told him. "I used it when I was learning them, but I know them now." "Thank you. I'll learn them too. There's a memory trick I'll tell you about another time. Rather than memorize them all for now, you could choose one of them and just think about it. What ideas does it suggest? What could it symbolize?" "Right, I will. There's..." He stopped. The circle in the diagram, divided into its little sections, reminded him of something. "There's what... It's sort of like something I saw." He described the spangled ring that he'd seen on the night Lord Asriel had come to the trout. She was interested at once. "That sounds like a migraine aura," she said. "Do you have bad headaches?" "No, never. Just the aura, then. You'll probably see it again sometime. Did you like the other book? The one about the Silk Road? It's the place I want to go to most in the world. One day, perhaps, you will..." That evening, someone brought Belle Sauvage back.